Hi, welcome to Meet a Yogi. I am here today with my special guest, Joe Roberson. Welcome, Joe.
Hi, Suzanne. Long time no see.
Yes, we were just talking before we started recording, so he's making a little joke. So if you don't know me, I'm SUZANNE DULIN. I'm the founder of SUZANNE. I am a coach. I work with yoga teachers and other creative people, helping them to create a sustainable, creative life. So if you're interested in working with me, just message me and I will be happy to get in touch with you. You can learn more about me at my website, SUZANNEDULIN.com, SUZANNEDULIN.com. Today, I am here with Joe Roberson, and Joe has taught yoga since 1992. He specializes in breath-centered practices. He's currently authoring a book, Introducing Breath-Centered Practices. The title is One Half Breath at a Time. So Joe, can you tell us a little bit about your book that you're working on? Your title intrigues me.
So the reason it's one half breath is that there was a researcher, like a social researcher. I don't know what kind of researcher he was, but his project was to try to define a present moment. Like, everybody knows what you mean by the now, the present moment, all that stuff. But he was out to kind of say, well, what are people talking about when they use the word?
How long is a moment?
Yeah, how long is a moment? And it has to do with working memory. It has to do with, how your brain processes information. And he came up with a present moment is approximately 5 seconds long. And I can't remember, exactly his what led him to 5 or 6 seconds, but he says that a present moment lasts only 5 or 6 seconds. And when you do the slow, deep breathing, when you do coherent breathing, especially, it's at a rate of about 5 breaths per minute. And that means that each breath lasts 10 or 12 seconds.
Right.
So half a breath lasts 5 or 6 seconds.
And so by doing this, you can maintain this sense of presence for one half a breath at a time.
Well, basically all it means is that the only time you can be present is in this window of 5 or 6 seconds. And therefore, you can only be present to one half breath at a time. And actually, if you're breathing much faster than that, there is no present moment.
Yes, you can totally see that when I work with people. One of the things in the course that I'm developing is teaching people to coordinate their breathing with their yoga movements, the movements of yoga, of moving in and out of yoga postures, as well as sustaining yoga postures, because you're actually moving always. So even when you're supposedly holding a posture, you're actually still moving. And I'm teaching how you coordinate that with your breath. And I can always tell when somebody is getting it or not because their movements slow down once they start to really sync up with their breath. And I can completely see it when they're struggling because they're sort of flailing their arms around or whatever the movement is, and they're just going way too fast. And then you can just see this like blissful look as they finally slow down and find the rhythm of breathing.
Yeah, it's kind of like up until that moment, the lights are on, business is being done, but there's really nobody minding the store. I mean, literally, in the temple I was at in Thailand, I just remember one of the teachers saying, the meditator creates the present moment. That's what you do when you meditate, is that you literally create the present moment. And if you're, what you're describing to me is that it's like when the person, when it clicks into place, so that there's actually somebody lands, in the moment, whereas before they were in their head, in the past, in the future, kind of jumping around while their body was doing what they're telling it to do, but they weren't really anchored and in the saddle, so to speak.
Yeah. I think that to me personally, this concept that you're getting to of this one half of a breath, just these few seconds, capturing them, what's beautiful about it is that there's always another chance. It's if you miss these 5 seconds, just, hop on the next half breath.
Yep. Yeah, you cannot, the only access is this one. The only access is this one. You can't do anything about the one
We got away.
The one before.
So we have as our subject tonight, tiny habits about breathing. And so can you talk, you actually had suggested that we talk about these tiny habits. So can you talk about how you relate tiny habits to this idea of a moment that you're connecting with?
Well, first of all, I mean, from the get-go, from the beginning, my intention has been it's for the book to be, I'm writing it for a reader who is not in the choir, a reader who is, for someone who isn't experienced in yoga, meditation, breath work. And for that reason, I've been looking for ways that the busy person who thinks they don't have time to do a dedicated yoga practice, a dedicated anything more than they're already doing, because, busy adults, they don't have time to add another thing. So the whole, and when I saw this TED Talk by BJ Fogg on his method, which he calls Tiny Habits, or the Tiny Habits Method, I sort of jumped on it and said, this is the thing. Because it's kind of backwards from the way that, you and I maybe, I think after you've done these things for years, because you were committed, you were interested, we did commit time. And then out of that, you find yourself doing them all the time, randomly, just because you've got this habit, right?
It starts to become more and more just a natural thing to be in a kind of meditative state, and it becomes more ingrained in you. It's not something you have to grasp for as much, but it sounds like your audience being people who would be new to it, you're trying to find ways to make it feel a little more accessible and approachable, where instead of saying sit down for an hour every morning and focus on your breathing, you can do a tiny habit. And like what?
Like what?
Like what?
Well, the 3 examples that we threw out we were talking about before. One is every time, and this comes from BJ Fogg. I didn't make this one up because in the TED Talk, he says, one of his first tiny habits was every time I go to the bathroom, I will immediately do 2 push-ups. So, going to the bathroom is something that everybody does once or twice or however many times a day.
If you're me, like 20 times a day.
So
a lot of push-ups.
So that is that's an ideal kind of trigger, and I'll get more into the 3 parts, but the whole thing about it is that you choose something you already do, you attach a tiny breath exercise thing that you do, follow it, and then the 3rd part is that you celebrate the fact that you actually did it.
Oh, really? So what do you do to celebrate?
Well, there's everybody. It has to be something that you would actually do. Like when you accomplish something, and like what do you do, Suzanne? When some people. Let's see. I have some examples here. Let's see. What do I do with my glasses? Oh, I put them over here. So BJ gave, in the TED Talk, he gave the example of that when he does his 2 push-ups, he pumps his fist in the air and says, "Awesome."
Okay.
And for me, that would be corny, right?
Right.
Just wouldn't do that, right?
Maybe you could give yourself a little high five, or like thumbs up, or.
And it has to be you. It has to be yours. It has to be something that you feel comfortable doing, that you feel good doing. Like some other.
You do the wave.
Examples, some other because of that silly commercial. You push the red button and say, "That was easy." Or, if you're more exuberant and out expressive, you could like spin around a time or 2 and stop and say, "That felt good." Or you could say to yourself, "And here I thought I would have a hard time remembering or finding the time. I've got this." But another way.
It's not like, necessarily like you're going out and buying yourself an ice cream sundae. It's just a little celebration. It sounds like
it's a little paddle.
Give yourself a little touchdown dance. And what do they call it? The end zone dance.
The reason that this celebration part is critical, actually essential, even though it may sound kind of corny and superfluous to some people, is that the whole point is that this is a different kind of a habit formation, or a different kind of, like when you do a big project or something, adults are typically good at delayed gratification. So this is not delaying gratification. The whole idea is don't delay the gratification.
Right.
Is that by giving yourself a little pat on the back.
Kind of like the rat with the lever. You're giving yourself that little dopamine hit, like, "Oh, good boy."
Or, okay, all right, so I guess I'm going to start. When I do mine, I'll press the lever, and I'll get a little piece of cheese.
Right.
Actually, in the book, I have it's not in the copy I sent to you, but at the very end of it, at the bottom, because the last celebration in my little list of suggestions is, in your mind, drop a gold coin or a penny endowed with the miraculous power of compound interest into your magic piggy bank. And then I have this illustration of a piggy bank. But the whole thing about it is that the tiny habit idea, it's the antithesis of delayed gratification. The whole thing about doing these little practices is that they are enjoyable, they're easy, they're quick, they're pleasant, they make you feel good.
And they're ingrained in your daily life, like connected to regular habits you already have.
Yes, there's not, and that's why I'm so glad that I discovered the Tiny Habits method and BJ Fogg, and it's perfect for what I'm trying to do.
So what were two other, we had said we wanted to give people 3, and we gave them the idea of when you use the restroom. And I think we had talked specifically, like when you flush the toilet, like that's your little, like it's the idea is that you have something am I correct? That you have this very concrete moment that you're connecting to your habit.
Yes, it has to be very concrete and visceral. It has to be, it's like a, when you tie a string around your thumb, it's the handle on the toilet, or it's the key of your car, so that when you turn the key off and you stop the car, that is your trigger. And for 30 seconds or 1 minute, you stop and you take a deep breath or 3, and you're done. And you say, wow, that was easy. I'm so glad I'm doing this.
And then you put a little coin in your piggy bank and you're like,
yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. And that's the 3 steps. Trigger.
But then as many times as you drive every day, maybe get in, 2 or 3 times, you have a kitty coming in, then that's 3 times that you did it that day.
Yes. And, and again, in the book, there's a lot of emphasis on compound interest, because I'm not sure if it's in the version I sent you or not, but I talk about New Year's resolutions and why they don't work. And, one of the big reasons they don't work is because people bite off too big of a resolution.
I love New Year's resolutions, and I'm really good at them. And it's interesting, and I totally get that, like, people really struggle with like long-term goals. And I love this, I like the idea, particularly for what you're teaching at the breath, that it's just something that you can start to integrate in with your life. And so it doesn't really even need to be, a big goal. It can just be like, a little habit that you develop.
Yeah, it really is like saving pennies, but the miracle of compound interest is that you're not just collecting pennies, you're gaining interest because the benefits, or by doing it once a day or 3 times a day, after 10 days, you don't have 10 pennies. After 10 days, you've got 12 pennies, because it starts to accrue
interest.
It accrues interest, and before you know it, it's snowballing into the benefits can be surprisingly big and substantial out of this tiny habit.
So we have the toilet.
Okay. We have the toilet. We have the handle. We have the key on the car, and another one is when you put your foot on a step. When you start going up the steps, or you start going down the steps, that is your trigger. That while you're doing the stairs, you are doing your breath technique, you know, like on the stairs, it could be, I always go to counting my steps and synchronizing it with my breathing. So it would be like 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, inhale 4, exhale 4, like that.
Can you teach us because it's so fast to do coherent breathing? Is it coherent breathing that you're doing along with this, or another technique? Or
it's basically coherent breathing, but it's not. I mean, technically coherent breathing is specifically at a rate of 5 breaths per minute. What I'm saying is, like I'm saying it's a easy basic version, and all it really is, it's just really synchronizing your steps and your breathing. It's what, you know, it doesn't have to be at that pace. All it really is synchronizing either your feet or your arms. You know, it's synchronizing your body with your breathing.
Okay.
And counting, because that then synchronizes your mind.
So like you would be stepping and you're like, as you're stepping, you're counting to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 1, 2, 3, 4, exhale. Like
we've already made it way too complicated. Way too complicated. It really doesn't. The only thing that matters, it doesn't matter what the number is. The only thing that matters is that while you're on the stairs, you're conscious of breathing in and out as you're walking the stairs.
You're just attentive to it.
Yes. Anything, you know, anything more rigorous, or, you know, that's all gravy, and it can easily get to be too much. You know,
so these things, like if I were to incorporate all 3 of these tiny habits, would be each time that I flush the toilet, then that would help me to remember, bring my attention to my breathing. I'm not necessarily counting or anything specific. I'm just noticing it.
Yes, because what tends to happen that gets in the way of adopting these breath-centered practices is automatically going to controlling the breath. And that I think is, it's just something that should be avoided. That, especially in the beginning, all you need to do is to bring your attention to, how am I breathing?
Yeah, as far as those sort of more elaborate breath practices, I started, as I had more experience with them, I started not to think about them as controlling the breath, more as sort of changing the shape of the existing breath. Yes. So that it wasn't controlling a breath, you know, forcing something to happen, working with the existing movement of breath.
Yeah, and what was interesting is that you said you came to that.
Yeah. Right. After having been taught it as more of a control.
And I think that I think that the default or the automatic is that people think you're supposed to reach in and change it, and to me that really short circuits, or that gets in the way. Because especially with the tiny habits, what we're really going for, you know, first and foremost, is paying attention to your breathing. If you just pay attention to because as Dr. Dan Siegel, he explained how, you know, we talked before about why is paying attention to breathing more effective at calming anxiety than other objects of meditation. Remember that conversation?
Yes.
So the whole point is that
this was in our previous, there's another video that I did with Joe, and you can watch it on the YouTube channel. We'll link it below, the other one that he did, but we talked about that. So this conversation.
And this is why this is why I keep emphasizing, don't try to control your breathing yet. This is not about controlling your breathing. This is about simply shifting your attention from your thoughts and your monkey mind, whatever's going on, your worry, whatever's going on in your head, simply shifting your attention to the sensations of breathing, the feel.
Always ongoing movements of breath, because they're, yeah.
And that, as Dan Siegel explained, simply doing that is profoundly calming. So that's all we need to talk about. We don't need to talk about how many breaths per step, how many steps per breath. We don't need to do that. We actually shouldn't do that in the beginning.
Yeah, just get into this habit. Every time you flush the toilet, when you stop your car, just take that moment, take just a minute, pay attention to your breath. And then when you're walking up the stairs, and we can all do these, like I just challenge everybody who's watching, and also I challenge everybody who's watching to put some comments about other ideas that you have about ways that you can incorporate little tiny habits in like this, because then you could really string together quite a few, little moments.
Yeah. So I have a few more. So again, there's 3 steps. We've been talking about triggers.
Mm-hmm.
So here are a few other triggers that you can choose. So after I brush my teeth, I will do X. After I go to the bathroom, handle, I will do whatever. After I answer a phone call, after I complete X, which would be some task you do every day, such as respond to email, or after I come to a stop at a traffic light, after I switch off the car engine, that's the car key, or the bedroom light, or any other thing that you turn off and on. And the last one maybe we'll talk about for a minute. After I hear the sigh of satiation telling me my stomach is full. And this is a big one, because I had a student years ago, and one day during our breath class, pranayama class, I asked if anyone would share what they've been gaining, what they've been learning, and the student said, well, since I started this class 6 weeks ago, I've lost 34 pounds.
What?
Yes, and that's what everybody said. What? And of course, everybody, wanted to know, and people started asking her questions like, "Well, you're on a diet, right? You're doing something, what? Huh? What?" And she said, "No. What happened is that since I started paying attention to my breathing, I noticed that after I've been eating for a few minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes," she said, I noticed there was this sound to my breath. And she said, I heard it a couple of times, and it occurred to me that was my body's signal of satiation. That was my body, my stomach saying, thank you. That's enough. And she said, so I started honoring that signal, and I would stop eating. I'd push my plate away, and and she said, all of a sudden I had all this time to enjoy talking to my husband across the table while I watched him eat.
That's amazing.
I've never forgotten that, and that is a tiny habit that shows the compound interest power, right?
That really does, because I imagine that she was doing some other things before she started doing that one, because that one actually sounds a little more advanced, because it's tuning into a more subtle signal of her own body rather than an external thing. But it seemed like it sort of primed the pump that she had done these more overt things so that she started to see other ways to apply it.
And see this is why, like we were talking about a moment ago, this is why it's critical that you don't jump in and think that you're supposed to do a technique. Because what she was maybe a little more advanced in was simply being mindful and noticing, and because she wasn't doing any technique. There was no breath technique involved at all. She was simply noticing how she was breathing, and and she had the intuition or the good sense to recognize what it was.
That's
right?
Amazing.
Yeah. I couldn't make that one up. I wish I couldn't make that one up. So anyway.
But it really does show the power of what you can get to with starting with these simple and kind of overt things. This reminds me very much of when I quit smoking. There was a book that was it was an older book actually. At the time, there was a group, Smoke Enders, and I think it's still around. But they had quite a nice book about with tips on quitting smoking. And one of the things that they talked about is that the reason that smoking is actually calming, even though nicotine is a stimulant, is because of the drag. That's dragging on the cigarette. It's the breath. And a lot of these things that you're talking about, these are moments that are triggers for people to smoke. And so they talked about actually like wearing a rubber band and sort of like, becoming aware of how when you got in the car, you automatically reach for a cigarette. When you wake up in the morning, when you eat it, a lot of people have it when they eat. And so, it reminds me very much of the way people incorporate these unconscious habits into their lives. At some point, if somebody was smoking, they had to actually develop those habits. And it's the same idea of somebody consciously developing a habit that's a lot healthier of attending to the breath at those moments when it seems like we kind of need them.
Did I ever tell you about the smoking meditation at the Osho
No.
place in India?
I was just watching the Wild Wild Country. So have you been watching that?
No.
Oh my God, you have to watch it. It's on Netflix. It's amazing.
But
it's about Osho's ashram in Oregon.
This is about Rajneeshpuram, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
It is.
But anyway, the point is that these tiny habits, they're not really about pranayama per se. They're not about controlling the breath. They're not about techniques. They're about self-knowledge. They're about becoming aware of your unconscious habits.
Yes.
And breathing is an unconscious habit, It's something we have a habit of doing. We don't think about it, but we keep doing it anyway. and we can't.
Thank God.
And we can't stop. It's an addiction.
I'm addicted to it. Yes, it's true. I literally can't live without it, Joe.
Okay.
So what is the smoking meditation?
Well, basically what it boils down to is that the activity of smoking, especially if you're ashamed of it, as I was, you're addicted to smoking, but you don't want to be there while you're doing it. You don't want anybody to see you doing it. You don't want to see yourself doing it, right? So you check out, you disassociate.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole thing about the breathing meditation is, okay, you're doing this. This is your now present moment. Are you, so be here and experience what you're doing fully. Stop checking out. And basically, there's no way you're going to quit smoking if you're not even there while you're doing it.
I had a similar experience to this recently because I've been doing this diet it's pretty restrictive in a lot of ways, and one of the things is there's no sugar, which sugar is my drug of choice. Like, I love sugar, and so I've been pretty successful with it, but I was going through a difficult time. There was lots of cake and things in the office around Christmas time, and I decided, like, I just found myself with a cupcake in my hand. And, but I decided, like, I'm just going to really, like, okay, I'm slipping off my diet. And instead of being, angry about it or just mindlessly eating this cupcake, I'm going to really pay attention. And I bit into the cupcake and I just thought, oh my God, that works. Like, wow, like I feel better, and it was wonderful to recognize and become aware of, instead of just doing it, getting the hit, but not being conscious of what was happening. It started me to be able to examine this relationship that I had with sugar and start to shift it and think about, are there other ways that I can relieve that pressure and anxiety without using sugar. But it was very useful to sort of recognize, oh, this is a trigger that I'm stressed out.
So it just occurred to me, the way you're describing that, you're describing nonviolent communication with yourself, aren't you?
We're actually next week. This is you're amazing at doing this, because I noticed we did another one. Next week, we're having Jeff Tretzen on, who does nonviolent communication. And that is, he doesn't know this yet, but that's the topic I want him to speak on. And that is actually one of the big practices is self-empathy. And it is so interesting to me, this, and it's more and more and more where my message is going. It just this message of kindness toward yourself, and also repeated kindness, which is what you're talking about. This, flushing the toilet, and every time a practice of returning to it, because how many times do you maybe miss the opportunity, but then maybe once a day you remind yourself, and then can, the practice is each time that you return to that habit that you're trying to form, that you don't, that you can actually pay attention at that moment, rather than going, oh crap, I missed literally the other 5 craps. But like that's really that's the stumbling block, is the anxiety of having missed out previously, or not.
Fear of missing out, fear of having missed out, fear of, so anyway, and again, the reason I don't want to call what I'm teaching breath work or pranayama is because it's really using the breath as it's just an access point for self-compassion, self-awareness. It's a tool for you to stop dissociating and stop beating yourself with a stick. You can only, you have to see these things. You have to see you have to see and hear what you actually say about yourself to yourself, right? Before you can do anything about it. So yeah, and which is why I love the nonviolent communication.
I love nonviolent communication. I just think it's like the next place to go after the yoga asana, the breath work, and then it's like, now the real work begins.
Yep. The yoga of language, the yoga of self-talk.
Yeah, yeah, it's beautiful. I'm actually feel like we're winding up, and I want to just tell you, like, I am so impressed with where your long practice has taken you. And one of the things that, my goal here at SUZANNE is for people to see what happens as people grow in a deep and long practice, that it takes you someplace really unique. And what I love about what you're doing is that when people start breath mastery work, a lot of times there's these very sort of elaborate practices that they're taught to control or shape their breath. But because you've been doing this so long and you're so knowledgeable and so experienced, you've just started boiling it down to the very essence and really started to find the practices that just, say, like, screw the, 5 breaths in, 5 breaths out, all of that. Like, it's just about becoming present over and over again. And then to be so specific in the ways that people can find it. And then also to speak with such compassion for the people that are getting started. I really am impressed with what you're putting together.
Wow.
I hope you're an inspiration for other people who are trying to, do what you're doing, write a book, which, I've been a reader for your book. It's so good. And you just keep going. And then ultimately just going to be working with a course also based on his book with us. And, it's just your progress shows. And it's just like, I really want people to see, like, we can all achieve this. And this is where I want us all to go, someplace where we're so clear on what we can do. Because to me, when it's what you're getting to is what a great teacher can do, which is teach something so simple and so clear that every single person in the room, no matter how advanced they are, they can relate to it.
Yep. Thank you. That's awesome to hear. Like, there was this, I don't know who said this famous thing, if you can't explain it simply, then it's a sure sign you don't understand it well enough yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's an awful paraphrase of
something more suave.
Yeah.
So we're going to put some. I'm sorry, I'm interrupting. You're about to say something.
I was, but if I don't remember now. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I just want to let people know that we'll be putting links down below to. Do you have a website, or you have a Facebook group, right?
Yes, I do. Thank you for asking.
What is your Facebook group?
It's called the Breathing Community, or I think it's just Breathing Community. Yeah, Breathing Community Facebook group. There's also a Facebook page, One Breath at a Time. I have website and all the rest of it. But if you start off with either the Facebook page, One Breath at a Time, or the group Breathing Community, that's the easiest way to track me down, I suppose.
That sounds great. And we'll put links to that. And then I'll also have links to my website and to the SUZANNE community if you're watching this on YouTube. Also, everybody click like, hit the subscribe button. That really helps the videos to get promoted and seen, get into the search engines. So it's really important that you comment, like, subscribe, have some kind of engagement with this post. And that will really help us to make sure that more and more people can see it. Not everybody realizes Facebook, like, we're going to put this up on Facebook and it won't share it to everybody in the group. So the more people who press buttons and comment and stuff, the more Facebook will show it to more people, because they'll see that that's an exciting post. And then they'll say, oh, everybody should get in on this action. So it really helps. It's a little game we have to play here with the social media. But please subscribe to the YouTube channel, SUZANNE Community. And thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you, Joe, for being our guest. And I'm going to end the recording now. Do you have anything to say? Last words?
My next appearance on your show is when?
I actually have to check, but I think it's about a month. And then I think we get booked out until August. So I need to book you up after that.
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted to put it out there that I'll be back.
Yes, yes. Joe's a regular guest here, so we definitely have him back. And if you have any comments about things that you might want him to talk about, let us know, and we'll start formulating that next discussion.
Thank you, Suzanne.
Thank you, Joe. Bye.